Today I'm out here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, home of fleas and ticks, lots of trees, Gettysburg battlefield, and of course, the Wheatfield. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm out here in Gettysburg now at a infamous place called the Wheatfield. And the majority of that is directly behind me here. We're going to take you out here today and we're going to talk a little bit about what happened in this location and the units that were involved and try to make sense of it all. So I'm out here at Gettysburg and I'm looking at some of the markers and the indicators of where the positions were on the field at the Wheatfield. And I like markers like the ones that I'm looking at right now. If you can look right here behind me, there is a left and right flank of the 1st Pennsylvania and the 2nd Pennsylvania reserves. This kind of gives you an idea. If you look up and down this road here, it's kind of in a line all the way over here towards the monument for the 2nd. It helps you to identify where the soldiers were lined up at particular points in time in the battle. Now again, off in the distance over there was the right and left flank of the 1st and the 2nd. And if you come down here, we have the right flank of the 1st, we have the left flank of the 11th, and it continues off in this direction over here, creating this line. So that gives you that mental image of where these soldiers were lined up. Really, if you've never had the opportunity to come out here to Gettysburg and check this place out, it's probably hands down the best preserved battlefield for the American Civil War in the United States. I'm out here at the Wheatfield and I am facing in the direction that the 1st and 2nd Pennsylvania reserves would have been facing. And directly behind me, I don't know if you can see off in the distance, is a little round top. About as close as I can get is Devil's Den. So we'll see if we can't get some photos of Little Round Top and Devil's Den here later on. But today we're going to cover the Wheatfield. So I got curious, of course, like I naturally do. And I wanted to see where the marker was for the 2nd Pennsylvania left flank, because I got a picture of the right flank earlier. And you have to go out into the woods to see the marker for that. But placed here right there on the ground is the left flank for 2nd Pennsylvania. Then we have the 1st Rifles. Now, just a short distance from where I'm at right now, I'm about to walk to the marker that indicates roughly the spot where their commander died in battle. So here we are at the location. The marker reads here, fell Charles Frederick Taylor, July 2nd, 1865, aged 23 years, 4 months, 26 days, colonel of the Bucktails, 1st Rifle Regiment, erected by his comrades and friends in 1905. Being in a place like this is pretty sobering. To get the chance to come out to Gettysburg, visit as many of these markers as you can, especially the Wheatfield, the different locations that you're more interested in. The more that you visit and the more places that you check out, the more you start to understand the battle and the movement of the troops that were out here at the different locations. So now I'm out in the Wheatfield and I'm looking at the left flank and right flank, 81st Pennsylvania and 148th Pennsylvania. So the 148th was off in this direction, and you can see their monument there in front of the woods. And then the 81st, starting with the left here, moving to the right flank there, facing this direction. I'm standing out in the middle of the Wheatfield right now, and I am on the right flank of the 81st Pennsylvania. And off in the background here is the monument to the 81st. The line of about 175 men stretched from that direction all the way down to that marker behind me. Hope you can see it. There it is. And then it looks like the 61st New York Infantry would have been directly on their right. So the terrain out here at the time would have had wheat, pretty tall wheat, but it would have been trampled down by the 2nd of July. And as you can see, I'm coming up on a ridge. I'm crossing over the lines for the 61st New York, and I'm walking down towards another set of monuments. I'm currently standing in the position of Battery D, New York Artillery, in the left flank of where the artillery would have been on the Wheatfield. And off in the distance here behind me, you can see the 61st New York, and then 81st Pennsylvania would have been a little bit further out there in the ridge, and then the 148th. So as I said earlier, this is Battery D of the New York Artillery, placed up on a high ridge. And this position's a little bit higher, a little bit more elevated than the ridge of the 61st New York, 81st Pennsylvania, and 148th Pennsylvania. I have cannons placed out here, kind of give you a little bit of perspective of the direction that they would have been firing. And here's the monument to Battery D, 1st New York. I'm now walking down across that deadly field called the Wheatfield, and I'm out in front of Union lines for the 61st, 81st, and 148th. And then off in the distance behind them there was the 27th Connecticut. This field was highly contested throughout the second day. Many times it changed hands, and many men fell wounded on this field, and some succumbed to those wounds. We'll talk about one particular person who died out here fighting. Between 4:30 and 6:30, this field changed hands 6 times. The Confederates attacked back and forth, and there's even a stone wall behind me where they took refuge and fought from behind. And somewhere out in this field, Colonel Harrison Jeffords fought to get his colors back for the 4th Michigan. And then an attacker came up and took his life with a bayonet. It happened somewhere out here in this field. And today we'll discuss a little bit about that, and we'll go through the movements of the different units that happened here in the Wheatfield. The fight out here was brutal. The conflict left scores of men bleeding, lying all about on the field. This field changed hands 6 times and was highly contested. It was said at one point in time that you could walk across the entire field without your feet ever touching the ground, meaning that you would step on a body every step. The fight was going okay until the collapse at the peach orchard. Around 6:30 p.m., the peach orchard collapses, and this field turns into chaos. The Confederates overrun this position, and they start to surround the Union soldiers that are here, and they push them further back than where they are currently. I'm at a part of one of the avenues right now where you drive, and there's monuments placed to indicate positions and different units that were placed out here. It's very easy to see why Some people have mentioned that they are confused as to the positions of units during the battle at the Wheatfield, because they move in all sorts of directions. But a lot of these were placed here because of gaining access in roads, so that when you drove by or when you went through here, you were able to see these monuments and they would not be forgotten. Now, some of them are placed out in areas that you have to hike to get to, and the access was different back when they were placed. So the positioning of these monuments do lend to the confusion. But as you can see off in the distance there's plenty of water down there in the area just at the foot of Little Round Top. And we'll see if we can't try to dispel some of the confusion. Now, just over my shoulder here, following this line of the wall, and then there's a small ridge I'm pointing at over here. Just over that hill is Devil's Den. And then pointing back towards this direction, Big Round Top comes out, and then Little Round Top is back here. And from all in this direction, the fields and the woods would have been filled with Confederate soldiers marching up over the hill, taking line of battle, and forcing its direction to this location. And the goal essentially was to try to take some of the high ground over here. Now, earlier we talked about the kernel of those bucktails that fell not too far from here. I have a marker behind me that indicates one of the flanks, and then their monument here is placed. They would have been off in this direction in those trees. So now I'm in a position that a lot of videos, a lot of documentaries talk about. The 5th New Hampshire, the spot where Edward E. Cross fell during the 2nd day of July, 1863. This unique monument was placed here, and it inscribes it right over there. It tells you what happened here exactly. As you can tell, this is not your typical monument on the field. It's very unique. Now, some of the earlier monuments placed on the field, they're very simplified, like the one behind me to Delaware. It has a date of 1885 down at the bottom. The more complex the monument is, typically, the newer it is. None of these monuments around here are really that new, but this monument just simply talks about the position it was held and the division that was here at the time. But it's really neat to see something that old on the field. Now, I just absolutely love monuments like the one behind me here, the 145th Pennsylvania Infantry. Place a soldier in action sitting on top of the pedestal here, sitting out in the fields right next to the 53rd. It's an amazing monument. I paused for a moment to tell you a little bit about a book that help you orient yourself to the Wheatfield. It's by Carol Reardon and Tom Vossler, A Field Guide to Gettysburg, the 2nd edition. I have the book in my hand right now, actually, because sometimes looking at these monuments, you do get a little backwards. It does get you mixed up unless you really know the field, like a licensed battlefield guide would. So this book has maps in it that's laid out with the different units, various units, and it actually has orientation spots for you to go to in order for you to get a good sense of what happened in those locations. I'm currently out here at the T intersection where Sickles Avenue is, and off in the distance here, just behind me, is where the Rose Farm is located. This entire area would have been Rose Fields, Rose Wheat Fields. There's also a Rose Run out here, Rose Woods. So that's kind of the location that I'm at right now. As you can see here off to my right is the Rose Farm, and kind of off in that direction would be Rose Run. The 118th Pennsylvania would be back in this direction here alongside the 1st Michigan, 110th Pennsylvania, the 5th Michigan, 8th New Jersey, 115th Pennsylvania, and then somewhere out in this direction over here would be the 17th Maine. And then directly behind it, 32nd Massachusetts, 62nd Pennsylvania, and 4th Michigan of Schweitzer's Corps. So out here it looks like we have one of the, well, it looks almost like a water ditch, but maybe one of the runs. Rose's runs, going through the field, crossing over. This water source behind me's seen better days, but at the time there would have probably been water in here, trampled through and blood running through it as well, as the soldiers fell around it, were wounded and bleeding out in the field. Now, the fighting that I'm talking about in this location was actually closer to the earlier part in the engagements that happened on this field. The Union soldiers were advanced this far forward to try to prevent the Confederate soldiers from the Rose farm from pushing itself past this location and over the hills where the Wheatfield is. Eventually, they were able to make their way to the Wheatfield and a little bit beyond. Again, as I was speaking earlier about the 17th Maine, I have the monument directly behind me now. And there's a stone wall that runs all the way back through here. Now, as the field was changing hands throughout the day, Confederates would use this stone wall for protection, and Union soldiers also would use the stone wall for protection throughout the day. Pretty amazing. I'm currently looking at the monument for the 115th Pennsylvania Infantry. And like I mentioned in earlier videos, if you really want to get a feel for where these troops were at certain points in time, you need to look for the flank markers. That's what's going to tell you where they were positioned, roughly how long their lines were. Now, if you get the chance to get out on foot here in Gettysburg and walk around some of these roads, a lot of these monuments are actually placed in a general direction of where the soldiers would have faced during the time of battle. If you get the chance to get out and walk around here at Gettysburg, a lot of these monuments are actually generally placed in the location of where the soldiers believed that they were and facing the direction of the enemy. Now, I'm at a location that I visit nearly every time I come out to Gettysburg, especially at the Wheatfield. There's a marker here that says, "Here fell Jedediah Chapman, Company H, Captain of the 27th Connecticut Volunteers." He had an illness going into Chancellorsville that prevented him from fighting. But he comes here in Gettysburg, he's placed in charge. And then in the Wheatfield, over my shoulder here, there's the 27th Connecticut way over there. As the fighting continued on, they moved their positions down here, and Jedediah falls in this position. His men thought it worthy of him to have a marker out here, so they placed it to pinpoint the location where they believe he fell and died. Now, it's hard to tell from this position, but off in the distance, the 5th Michigan, 8th New Jersey, and 115th Pennsylvania was defending that ridge line up there. Coming towards it was the 9th Georgia, 8th Georgia, 11th Georgia, and then off over in this distance, the 59th Georgia, and 1st Texas and 3rd Arkansas were headed towards Rose Woods.